Linda, it's 7:03 in New
Yep.
York. I think let's go.
Okay. So, welcome everyone to this webinar um, as a launch event for the Statistical Commission taking place later in February and March. Just a couple of practical points. The cameras and microphone of the participants have been disabled. So if you have a question throughout the event or during the question and answer period, please feel free to type your question into the chat. The reaction tab at the top does also work. So if you want to raise your hand during the question and answer period, there's also the possibility of taking the floor and asking your question. And just to update everyone that I think when you joined it, it was the bar at the top, but the meeting is being recorded. And so after the event, we will make that recording available to all the participants, but then also to others to watch if they're not able to join us at the event right now. So thank you. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Linda, and to our team for setting this up. Good morning from New York. Hello around the world to this webinar on adapting to the evolving statistical and data ecosystem. It's one of the events leading up to our commission session. I hope you've already booked your tickets and your hotels, and we can all meet very, very soon in New York. I'm certainly very much looking forward to it. Of course, we all love our statistical commission. And so I think today is a little bit of a reflection of where we are as a statistical commission after 75 years, after all, and where we are going. So I think that's a little bit the topic of our meeting. We, of course, all think we are special. My apologies to Ambassador Stover that probably all her commissions think that they are special, but we always think we are special. In the sense, a little bit, of course, there is most of our representatives, almost all of our representatives are from capital, and they know each other. So you will see that we also have been partially working together for very long periods. We sometimes have the benefit of being the chief statisticians in their responsibilities for a decade or so. And that's why you will see us referring to each other as George, Gabriela, and Yusuf. And I think that's a bit of the essence of our community. I think we are also a proud technical community. I think we have contributed to creating a language in terms of numbers and data over all the years of the history of the UN. The Commission was almost created right at the off the bat. We had 75 years of our sessions going on. And I will not go through the entire history of the Statistical Commission, but I always say in one sentence, you can almost say that the Statistical Commission has created the tools to measure economic development in the 1950s, measure social development in the 1970s, measure the environment in the 1990s, and in our century now measuring institutions, governance, and all of the complex interactions that support development. This is, of course, a gross simplification, but I think the Commission has followed the development paradigm and has always tried to create the statistical language and so that all countries around the world can provide the numbers. I sometimes like to say, but I'm totally biased. I'm, of course, a statistician, that the statistics is one of those quiet areas where the UN works actually very well. We're not very often in the news. Actually, we don't want to be in the news. Most of the time, when we are in the news, it's bad news. And but we are providing the underlying data and information architecture that makes the rest of the UN work. And as we are a professional community, sometimes we can even jump over some of the political discrepancies between countries because a chief statistician of one country and another country, even if they are politically not getting along, they have the same challenges counting their people or calculating their GDP, and they have a joint language. And so Some of the more recent developments in the Statistical Commission was, of course, we had the data revolution discussion around 2015, right at the beginning of the SDGs. And that, I think, enabled us also to respond to the SDG challenge very well, because, of course, we immediately first got a heart attack because for the MDGs, we had like 60 indicators that we had to deliver worldwide. And now for the SDGs, it's like 240. So most of the chief statisticians said, oh my God, how are we going to do that? And we will talk about capacity building a little bit later. We created in that moment, and I think I just wanted to mention that also an outcome of the data revolution discussion was the creation of the World Data Forum, because the Statistical Commission is mostly driven as an intergovernmental body because we have to take normative decisions and they have to be implemented by governments. So there is a sort of a parliamentarian function, which is very dominant. But we have created this parallel institution of a World Data Forum where everybody is invited, everybody, academia, civil society, private sector, and so on and so forth, for a rather free-flowing discussion without the pressure of having to come up with the report at the end. And so I think the World Data Forum that has now happened 3 times is an important corollary to the Statistical Commission, and I just wanted to mention this here as we look back. Now, perhaps something that prompts our discussion today is the review of our terms of references. I mean, I mentioned the Commission has been around for exactly 76 years now. And our terms of references dated from 1971. So last year they were actually 51 years old. So I think that was a natural reason to have a look. It was an opportune moment. The situation in countries is changing, and we are going to discuss this today, how the changes in countries drive changes in the Commission and the other way around. And also there was at the highest level, and I'm sure Ambassador Stover is going to talk about this, a reflection of how the whole ECOSOC family functions. So it was an opportune moment for us to review our terms of reference. We didn't revolutionize it. I think we reaffirmed many of our roles so that there is a lot of stability. But we did push the envelope a little bit into the direction of data. I mean, we are classically a statistical commission, but I mean, the statistics universe has expanded enormously, and we like that word. It's in our title. Ecosystem. There is so much more information now floating around, and you have to battle with that at the country level, and we have to battle with that at the global level. So I think the Statistical Commission sort of asked for and got a mandate to help the UN as a whole, the whole UN system, to also organize the ever expanding statistical data universe ecosystem. So that's where we are right now. We have a fantastic panel today. Let me just very briefly introduce them, and I will not give you long biographies, but perhaps one or two fun facts. We have Gabriela Vukovic, who is currently the chair of the Commission and president of the Hungarian Statistical Office. And I like to tease her sometimes as statistical royalty, because when you walk into the Statistical Hungarian office, you will see a picture of her father hanging there. So her father was already working in the statistical universe. So she was literally born into that. And of course, Gabriela holds the world record in chairing the Statistical Commission because she was our chair already in 2012 and 13, and now she's added 22 and 23. So we are in very good hands. Then we have Ambassador Stover, the president of Economic and Social Council and permanent representative of Bulgaria. And I really must thank you so much for jumping in there. You are very brave. This is, I said in the preparatory meeting, jokingly, when people hear of a meeting of statisticians, they usually run the other direction. But we have you here as our boss, basically, because you are a customer of the Statistical Commission. You are our very important nexus that we don't become an ivory tower and discuss academic and philosophical issues, but that we are related to the UN development universe in which we are operating and which we are serving. And so your vision, your advice, your questions, your view of us as an outsider is very much appreciated. And thank you for getting up very early in New York to join us in this debate. And I know you have also played a leading role in reviewing the whole ECOSOC machinery, and so you have also a lot of experience with other commissions. So this is, of course, for us also very helpful. So thanks for joining us. We have Mr. George Simon Ulrich, who is the Vice Chair of the Statistical Commission and leads the Statistician General of the Federal Statistical Office of Switzerland. And he has, of course, a very specific background. He comes from the private sector. This is a little bit unusual in our universe. And I'm sure he has had some difficulties at the beginning to connect with his private sector background and mentality into the government sector and in the international community. But it just shows the nice diversity that we also have in the Statistical Commission. We have long-standing government officials, we have professors and representatives from academia and the private sector here. George, of course, helped us as a global community enormously by hosting the World Data Forum in Bern in 2021. Even twice, we had it virtually in 2020 when it was originally planned, and in 21 as a physical event. So thank you very much for that. And we have Mr. Yusuf Murangwa, the Director General of the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda, who has been the head of his national office since 2009 and is definitely a professional statistician and has played an important role in our big data discussion, which is one of the areas where we are pushing the envelope. And they have a regional hub in Rwanda, so that was quite innovative and experimental for the African context. And I just had the pleasure of meeting him in Paris and being with him in the Paris 21 context, where he has just been elected and designated co-chair of Paris 21. So he is really a trusted voice of the developing countries to bring to the table what is the view of an experienced chief statistician from a developing country. So we have a phenomenal team. And let me see what I did. I'll introduce a speaker. I am supposed to say something how we conduct this. We have 2 rounds of questions, and then we will open it up to the dialogue and questions and answers from the audience, and I hope we can do that. And we purposefully kept it a little bit informal. We didn't want to kill you with PowerPoint presentations. I said it's too early for me in New York to put on a tie and a suit. I rolled up my sleeves. And I'm happy to have some friendly exchanges with all of you, and we want to keep it light, so I'm looking forward to that. So then, it always gets longer than you think. After these introductory remarks, let me turn it over to Gabriela, our chair, for also her introductory remark. And the first question, I mean, Gabriela, you were really leading the latest discussion on the review of our working methods and negotiating the ECOSOC resolution that gave us our new terms of reference. I mean, what do you remember most? What were your great moments? What were the horror moments? Please share your thoughts about and where we are as a statistical commission, and I think where we need to go. Thank you, Gabriela.
Thank you, Stefan. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. It is my pleasure to meet such a large and distinguished group of hikers on the road to the 54th session of the Statistical Commission. I would like to extend our special welcome to Ambassador Stoeva, President of ECOSOC, who graciously accepted our invitation. And I would like you to remember our very interesting discussions, Ambassador Stoeva, during the past couple of years about the functional commissions and about ECOSOC. And it was really very inspiring. Those discussions were really very inspiring. Today we meet in the cyberspace, but it's thrilling to know that in a few weeks we will meet in person in New York for the 54th session after such a long time of personal meeting in New York. This event is more than just a milestone on the road to the 54th session of the Commission. The new mandate of the Commission itself is a milestone on the road that leads the global statistical community from the 20th century to the 21st century. The old mandate of the Commission was adopted, as Stefan mentioned, over 70 years ago, and it served well its purpose of guiding the work of the Commission for a long time. However, we all experienced that the world of data, or as we often call it, the data ecosystem, underwent evolutionary changes over the past few years. Many statistical systems adapted to the new circumstances. Many others are still in the process, and many are looking for ways and tools to adapt to this new data ecosystem. In this setting, the previous mandate of the Commission could no longer give guidance and support to national statistical systems to integrate into the fast-changing data ecosystem. We as statisticians need to form new partnerships with the broader data community, adopt innovative solutions to our data production, and while implementing our fundamental principles and communicating our core values, we need to create appropriate new standards that are not only applicable to official statistics, but can also serve as models for the broader data community. On the other hand, impulses and thrust from other data communities will be beneficial in modernizing official statistics. The adoption of the new mandate of the Commission is a first step in the global statistical community when in the process of adapting to the evolving statistical and data ecosystem. This is the cryptic title of the documents related to our mandate, process of adapting to the evolving statistical and data ecosystem. Many statisticians from all over the world engaged in this process, and the mandate was first adopted by the Statistical Commission and eventually by ECOSOC. All contributions were extremely valuable, and when Stefan asked what were the horror moments and what were the let's say the better times in this process, I think there were only better times in this process because there was such a big interest from chief statisticians and from the statistical community, and there were so many very valuable inputs to the original document and to the evolving document before it was finalized. And I think all contributions were very welcome. They were very valuable, and they also strengthened our tradition on taking on board inputs from all our colleagues who represent a rich variety of statistical cultures that compose the global statistical community. I won't talk too much about, or I don't really intend to talk about what didn't change much in the document or in the mandate. I think it's better to focus on what did change, because that is the novelty and that is what we have to really incorporate in our minds and in our thinking. The new mandate clearly states the interlinkages between statistics and other data, not only in the national settings, but also in the UN administration and in the family of UN institutions, by reaffirming that the Statistical Commission is the primary body of coordination of the global statistical program in general and of the UN statistical and data-related systems. The broader scope of statistics and data replacing the narrower focus on statistics gives a new interpretation to the role of the Commission. In this context, it is also important that the mandate refers to all kinds of data sources that can be used and integrated in the statistical production, which is of course very important because there are so many new types of data sources, and access to those data sources is so important in producing official statistics. It also requests a broader mandate for national statistical offices to be involved in national data governance and to increasingly engage in data stewardship roles. This again is a novelty, obviously, but it is also important that national statistical offices recognize this opportunity, and also that governments recognize that there is so much the statisticians can give to national data governance to contribute to data stewardship and to data governance and data management. As for the role of the Commission within the UN institutional system, the new mandate assigns the Commission the role of primary body responsible for the governance of statistics and data within the UN system. And in order to enable the Commission to fulfill this role, calls upon the new UN data-related system to report to the Commission on all domains of work on statistics and data. This again gives a very serious focus that the Statistical Commission is not only dealing with statistics in its old sense, let's say, but statistics and data are in the responsibility of the Statistical Commission, and also to coordinate the work on data and statistics within the whole UN system, which helps to identify all kinds of redundancies that possibly exist, but also to identify synergies that can exist within the UN statistics and data system. As you can see, the new mandate expands the role of the Commission, which will be instrumental in integrating official statistics into the broader data ecosystem, in the development of partnerships between the various actors of the data landscape, and in implementing innovation programs and projects in official statistics. However, it also means an increased responsibility for the Commission, as we shall have to incorporate into our work new perspectives, accommodate other data cultures that do not necessarily follow the core values and the logic of official statistics, while upholding our fundamental values and principles. To summarize, the new mandate of the Statistical Commission is a necessary but not sufficient condition of better integrating official statistics into the colorful world of data. The hard work, mingled with new opportunities and new challenges, still lies ahead of the Commission. And let's work on that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela, for those leading us into the debate. And I like how you said the terms of reference, the new terms of reference are a necessary but not sufficient condition. It's exactly where we are today. We have a mandate, but the question is now, how do we make that actually work? And we have a very experienced voice that can give us some advice. Ambassador Stoeva, you are our outside voice, our reality check. You have also the view of other commissions, what works and what doesn't work. We can try to position ourselves and describe ourselves, but what we are is also obviously determined from how the outside world sees us. And in a way, I called you one of our first customers, because when we are done with our session and we have a report, the one we are sending it to is you, ECOSOC, you and your colleagues, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to hear your perspective. How do you see the Statistical Commission, where it stands, what it has done, how it stands in the ecosystem of the ECOSOC system, and how is the Statistical Commission regarded, and how can it play its role? And if you have any advice how we can play it potentially even better, we would certainly be happy to hear about it.
Thank you very much first for inviting me to take part in this event. I'm in no way an expert on statistics, but we use it in our everyday lives. And while I was listening to Gabriela and to you presenting earlier, I was thinking that basically you are the lab, you are the ones that provide the data, so the diagnosis can be set. And we keep saying that we're behind with the SDGs, but the reason we know we are behind is because of the data you provide to us. I have a number of remarks that I am supposed to provide, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then once we start with the panels, we can have a more free-flowing conversation. As I said, it is a pleasure for me to participate here with you today at this side event addressing the evolving statistical and data ecosystem. And I understand that for you, ecosystem is the buzzword now. So I have to use it. These matters are crucial to all of us as data has become extremely important in our life. For us, that makes that make our work the advancement of the implementations of the SDGs and Agenda 2030 even more so. Let me start by congratulating all of you and the Statistical Commission for the outstanding work that you carry in developing global standards and norms, tools and methodologies, as well as supporting member states in advancing their statistical and data capacities. As a functional commission of the Economic and Social Council, the Statistical Commission plays a key role in supporting the Council's mandate to promote higher standards of living, economic and social progress and advance sustainable development through international cooperation in these matters. And in your opening remarks, you also mentioned how throughout the decades, the Statistical Commission has assisted in improving lives in general and moving the economic and social agenda forward. The 2030 agenda provides our agreed path towards these high objectives. As governments debate and design strategies and policies towards the sustainable development goals, they need statistics and other forms of data to make sure that accurate assessments are made, effective policies are developed, and achievements and gaps are duly monitored. High quality, accessible, timely, reliable, disaggregated, open and interoperable statistics and data are essential for timely decision-making at all levels. The Statistical Commission displays a key enabling role for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and other internationally agreed goals. We all wait in anticipation in the eve of every high-level political forum on sustainable development to the publication of the SDG progress reports. That progress is assessed against the targets agreed through the Statistical Commission and using statistical standards, tools, and methodologies developed by the Commission. Without statistics and data, we cannot fully assess how we are progressing, and it would therefore be difficult to figure out where to focus our attention to achieve the goals. I am delighted to see collaboration of the Statistical Commission with other subsidiary bodies of the Council, as well as with partners throughout the UN system, as well as with member states. Partnerships are essential to navigate the complexities of our times and facilitate integrated approaches. We constantly speak about breaking silos, and I think that the Statistical Commission is an example of how silos are being broken, and you collaborate with pretty much every other functional commission in one way or another, because everybody needs data. Improving collaboration amongst ECOSOC functional commissions and expert bodies, and amongst them the UN system entities, was one of the recommendations resulting from the review of the work of these subsidiary bodies undertaken last year. And I take this a pause to thank you particularly for your contribution. This was a very lengthy process. It took us 7 months to conclude, but the Statistical Commission was a functional commission that was highly involved from the very beginning with really substantive recommendations and overview of the work. So thank you very much for this participation. Your contribution was essential for the good outcome of the paper. So now we all have to implement it together. I would like to take this opportunity again to thank you for that, and I look forward to the discussion and that we're going to have now. And I know that in the panels there will be more specific questions we can address, so I won't take much time now here.
Thank you so much again for being here with us and jumping in, and also highlighting one aspect which I like is the ability of the statisticians to play a transversal role, because I mean, obviously all of the development sectors, whether it's economic, social, population, all of the environment, all of the areas in the United Nations need data. So we, by nature, we can help to string at least one line across the entire spectrum, and so on and so forth. And I think that's certainly a role we like to play to help and support ECOSOC's work. Okay, let's turn to our national chief statisticians. I mean, George and Yusuf, and perhaps I can just ask the same question to both of you. And and asked you, I mean, and the question is about the relationship between what's happening at the national level and what is happening at the global level in a way. I mean, the data landscape has changed at the national level in many ways, and I would like to hear your experiences and how do we carry that into the global system? I mean, we do it very often through working groups that bring topical new developments to the global level. I mean, Yusuf is very familiar with the big data work, and we would like to really hear from you how things have changed in your country and where do you see that the Statistical Commission can use this relevant experience from the national level and bring the ecosystem that you are creating at the data ecosystem that you are creating at the national level also to the global level. So your thoughts on that, both from a perhaps more developed country and a developing country perspective, would be appreciated. Perhaps I can ask Yusuf to go first, and then George. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan. Greetings to everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this very important discussion. A few years back, some of us thought that big data, the data revolution, new technologies, and the opportunities of widening the statistics ecosystem will make it much, much easier for us to get development statistics. We also thought these opportunities will give good results sooner than later. But now what we see is it is taking longer. It's not necessarily a question of replacing our old approaches in doing statistics with new approaches. We realize that it will be more of complementing what we've been doing rather than replacing. We are also realizing that it will take longer than what we initially thought. Some of us in some countries, we've been on this journey for more than 10 years. Of course, we've had good progress, but when we see where we intended to be, I think we still have a lot of work to do. We are not where we want to be at the moment. And this brings very many challenges at country level, especially from the developing countries' perspective. We have issues of capacity, of resources, of work requirements to sustain and catch up with the traditional unfinished businesses of doing what we need to do for statistics systems to function, catching up in almost all areas: economic statistics, social statistics, labor, and many other areas. And yet we are supposed to catch up with the new trends and allocate resources to make sure that we also benefit on the new trends that are coming up and also widen the ecosystem, the statistics ecosystem. Because of this challenge, what we see is that we need to find ways to bridge the gap between what we do and agree at the Commission level. Over the years, over the last 5-8 years, we've had very good discussions at the Commission and so many decisions at the Commission on what we need to do to make sure that we don't miss the opportunities that manifest themselves with widening the statistics ecosystem and benefiting from the new technologies, benefiting from big data and so on and so forth. So we need to get ways to bridge the gap between what we do and decide at the Commission and what is actually happening at the country level, especially developing countries level. because the burden of dealing with these two issues is quite heavy. Dealing with what we need to do that has been traditional that we've not been able to do so far, and then also making sure that we are up to the new trends so that especially developing countries, we don't remain behind. One way of approaching this, of course, this is a very challenging issue. We know we have so many partners that work with the Commission, that work with almost everyone to try to deliver what we decide at the Commission, but still the gaps persist. And when we see at our country levels, we don't strongly feel the effort. We feel the effort, but at a distance. We don't feel that this effort is coming, knocking, and working with us at country level to make sure that we are up to speed to catch up with these opportunities. And one way of addressing this, I think we have to increase the role of specialized agencies, especially in some sectors, and the partners that work in those sectors, and mapping exactly what they are able to do to bridge this gap and make sure they work very closely with countries to bridge that gap. And also this channel can also be used to give feedback back to the Commission so that the Commission is aware of what is working, what is not working in different contexts of different countries in all regions. So I think this is one of the approaches that can be used. In fact, we've seen this approach working at country level in some countries with some partners. If the partners figure out exactly what niche they want to fix in a country vis-a-vis a specific issue, and work closely with the countries and also collect feedback, we see it working. So I think this is one of the ways that the Commission can improve its working with partners to make sure that we achieve what we want to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yusuf, for this perspective, and I hand the microphone immediately over to George.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, and very welcome to everybody, specifically, of course, also Ambassador Stoeva, that you're joining us. This is very good for us also to hear a bit the outside view when we're talking here a bit what we think, what we do good, and what we can develop further. It's always good to hear from someone who's using then this information and the data that we provide, if it is really helpful for you. So that's why thank you very much. I mean, there is already said a lot about where we could develop the work of the Commission further, such as the data stewardship or helping others by analyzing the data. And of course, we still have the production of information that we already do since many years. I mean, there are statisticians all over the world, longer than the Commission exists. And I would say we always changed the way we do statistics over time. Stefan already mentioned a bit, because also the questions that there are in the world has changed. And I would say in the last couple of years, and it started before COVID already, I mean, we saw that there are many other information producers as well, not only the Statistical Office. But the thing that makes the statistical offices and the National Statistical Office and this Commission special is that we agree on certain standards. We agree on how we do it. We agree on framework and definitions and all these things. And that helps us, of course, also today. I mean, actually, we are producing information as well, but the competence that we have is, of course, also in the field of data. What is a qualitative high data set? What is a standard that we need, that we talk about the same things like that? And I think this dimension is is much bigger than it had before, because we have a lot more data. And people are not very competent quite often in valuing this data, saying, is it a good data, is it not a good data? So the whole thing of statistical and data literacy is something that I think is quite strong within our community. But I would say, and that was also a bit the experience through COVID time, we need to enable also others with these topics. We have to reach out and helping them, showing what can they do with their data, but not only when data is here, but also how data occurs, where it's coming from. Because actually, I mean, it would be the best thing if the data is harmonized at the place where it occurs. And that's not the case today. Everybody's using another format, everybody's using another standard, and. And one of the things that our commission should do, in my view, is first of all, sharpening the communication in the sense to enable other people to gain better data and statistical literacy. And the second thing that we also play a role, and then that you can see that is now when I take the example of Switzerland, the Board of Ministers, they gave us the task to harmonize the data at the source where it occurs. And this is an incredible, huge job to do because, I mean, it is not only the government producing data, it is also the private sector, academia, and so forth. So we developed a kind of a metadata catalog that everybody can see what kind of data they have. So the visibility of what we have, not only from the side of statistics, but also on the side of the data, is something that can help everybody. And what we also have to say is, I mean, the statisticians are not the only one knowing how to deal with data. Of course, there are also others from different fields. The role we can play is that we really provide something helping each other, that we reach common goals. And I mean, the 17 goals of the SDGs are typically something that everybody can help and join, but someone needs to play the role, not only for the results, but also for where the data is coming from, how we coordinate that. And this is, I would say, as Gabriela was also mentioning already in her introductory speech, this is something that we should, I would say, do more than we do today. Helping others agree on standards, and then we also, for example, just simple things like, what is a data steward? What is his role? Where it starts, where it stops? Things like that. We should agree on definitions and bring that to a discussion here in the Commission, and helping then the rest of the world, if you want to say like this, that we talk from the same things. Sounds not so difficult, but in fact it is incredibly difficult. And I think this should be a role that we should play. I've seen that you want to react on what I would say, so I will give over to you. Sorry, Stefan, I don't want to jump into your moderator role, but I think it's important.
I'm a happy facilitator, and I'm very happy that our ambassador wants to jump in with a follow-up question, remark. Please.
Thank you very much. I'll be short, but I actually wanted to make that point that in order for us to have the data that we need for the SDGs, it's important that it's comparable and that we have disaggregated data. So we need more unification, because at the moment we're comparing oranges to apples. We have the statistics, but everybody uses a different baseline. And when we talk about science-based policies, we do need to base them on the same data so we can measure correctly and we can see the achievements, because we have a big discrepancy. We have the VNRs, the Voluntary National Reviews, that I presented each year. And if you listen to them, most of the pictures we hear are rosy. But data shows different at the end of the day. The world is not in a better shape, while the national reports show a bit better and optimistic picture. Of course, I think it's in human nature to think more positively rather than to be demotivating. But that's where data can help. And I completely agree that we need to work on more harmonized ways of collecting data, especially disaggregated data, because general data can mask, and in order to see really how the principle of leaving no one behind is implemented, disaggregated data is the one that actually can show us that. Thanks, and sorry to jump in.
No, I'm very happy to deviate from the script. Thank you for that intervention, and I'm just playing it happily back to one of our panel, whether somebody wants to react on any or all of the aspects that you were talking about. George, you were the one who triggered the question, so maybe I play it back to you first if you want to react. And
No, I think this is, I mean, you know, we always can be better in any way and everywhere, but it's also good to focus on things. And I think one of the things is really, that was, we just mentioned, it was really harmonizing data, that we're really talking about the same thing, and not only about statistics, but also the way we collect data, things like that, and then we take the same data, have the same standards, not only the field of statistics, but also the field of data. And the second thing, that we also reach out, communicating, enabling other people what they can do now with this data, because staying within the commission is not enough. I've just seen it. I came this morning from Davos. I was at the WEF. I was invited for a panel there with a lot of important people all over the world. The topic was harnessing the power of data to shape the future. And I mean, it shows that people start recognizing that data and statistics is something which is very important. And there were also politicians there saying it is not enough just to rely on data, but it also has to be that politicians start to really make the decision based on this data, and not that they're bringing in their ideology. So everybody has to make a step to each other. We to explain why we do it, how we do it, and of course we also need to have resources. Yusuf mentioned it quite often. The national NSIs and NSOs have not enough resources to really do that. But on the other side, of course, the closer we get to them to explain what they can do, how they can do, then they can also help us that really decisions are based on data and quality, high quality data. So, I mean, this is, I would say, if these are the two things that we can really focus in for the next couple of years: communication, explaining things, and that we have a better basis for data that we can measure it better all over the world, not only in the developed countries, specifically also in the other countries as well. That should be the two aims we really focus on.
Gabriela?
Yes, thank you. I would like to relate to Ambassador Stoyaba's comment. I think it's very important. Actually, the Statistical Commission was created in order to enable comparability for us to develop standards, to develop common methodologies, just in order to enable comparability across countries. And of course, this is one of our constant concerns. The other, let's say, more recent concern is disaggregation, is to produce more granular data in terms of geographic granularity. For this, we certainly need to integrate geographic and statistical data. This is an ongoing process, and there is a strong cooperation between the geographic community and the statistical community, also at the level of the functional commissions of GGIM and the Statistical Commission, but also in national settings and in big international projects. So this is something that we work on hard. Of course, the work is in progress all the time. I mean, all developments are in progress, and all development is in progress all the time. But the other aspect of more granularity or more disaggregated data is, let's say, social disaggregation, to present data on invisible groups, on invisible minorities, or not necessarily minorities, but invisible groups. And that is something which is very strongly felt in the statistical community, and of course also in the political community. Leaving no one behind is in order not to leave anyone behind, we need to produce data on all those groups, all those populations or subpopulations that we don't want to leave behind. This, of course, is very resource consuming. We need a lot of development in order to produce this data, but of course it needs a lot of capacity building also, and I think this is something that we need to talk about, and we plan to talk about at some point, even during this event and in other events, the capacity building, and not only in developing countries, definitely not only in developing countries, in all countries of the world, in all statistical systems in the world. We need to have serious capacity building in order to fulfill all these new types of activities to develop new methodologies, to develop new standards in order to be able to respond to adequately respond to user needs for statistics. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I give the floor to Yusuf, just one short remark, just to show that Ambassador Stoeva is really fearless, and she also jumped. She's not afraid of technical communities. She's been discussing with GGIM, with the geospatial community. We just recently had a lunch, actually, because there is an initiative to strengthen the geospatial work at the United Nations. And there was also an ECOSOC resolution into this direction. And as Gabriela mentioned, this grows also from the country level to the global level, because at the country level, national mapping agencies and national statistical offices, or whatever they may be called, have been increasingly working together to integrate these strong information systems, and in particular also with the concern of disaggregation, because if you have national data at a statistical office, when you put them on a map, you can really see that there may be differences even within the countries. Obviously, there always are. And where are the most vulnerable groups, households, regions? And so integrating, I always joke, the marriage between statistics and geospatial information is going to be very, very powerful. And I want to use this opportunity to thank the ambassador to support us on all fronts. Yeah. Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I want to thank Madam Ambassador for a very strong observation. These are some of the things that we need to fix. These are some of the things that we need to fix. Of course, the Commission has a strong role to play, but also beyond the Commission, the wider statistics community. And most importantly, Madam Ambassador, we need a lot of support. We need a lot of support from the political level, both at the global level, but also at country level, and also from the finance side. We see a lot of financing for development, and we don't see enough financing that comes to statistics. So we need very strong support from the political and the financing decision makers at the global and national levels. I'll give an example. In 2017-18, Rwanda volunteered to do the voluntary national reviews. We did an assessment. We were able to report, our systems were able to report around 60% of what we needed to report. So the 40%, we didn't even have baselines, we didn't have even anything. And on average, there was a report that was done by the African Union. On average, Africa was around 40% by that time. So in statistics, if you have an average that is 40%, so you can easily see that maybe some countries at 5%, maybe 10%. So it's not a good situation to be in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think that connects also to one point that George brought into the discussion, namely the importance of quality of statistics, because there is so much information around. We all know that. Everybody who switches on a computer is bombarded with data and information, but it has become increasingly our job to also validate, and as George put it, communicate the value of statistics and advise politicians what can you do with different pieces of information, and which are the high quality elements. And we all know high quality in every part of life costs money, is worth an investment. I mean, you get what you pay for. This is a very old saying. And if we are interested in solid information systems, and the ambassador mentioned comparability, and I always say there are two comparabilities. There is comparability between countries and there is comparability over time. This is also important for us because the phenomenon, we don't take snapshots, we make a movie. We measure development. If we measure things differently in 2000 and 2010 and 2020, we will actually not be able to say whether there has been any progress. So part of the raison d'être, I would almost say, of a statistical system is also to ensure over time consistency and comparability so that we can actually make assessments of development or whether there has been any progress or not, apart from the obvious comparability in the UN context between the countries so that we can meaningfully have a discussion about what kind of policies work or do not work, or what have we learned, or who needs most help. This is also, of course, one of the reasons why we look at the detailed data so that the international community can dose its support to those who most need it. And for that, we need, of course, strong comparability of data. George.
Thank you, Stefan. I think, the term of what is quality is easily said, but difficult to define. Because for everybody, quality can be something different. And I think I just can bring the example how it worked in Switzerland. There was the board of ministers came to Neuchâtel, where our statistical office is, and they were asking me, how can you collect data only once? So how we do the once only principle. Because we collect data, but someone else collecting also data. Because it sounds the same, but if you really look at it, it's not exactly the same. So both of them got the legitimacy to collect the data, plus minus, it's the same data. So we had to have first a discussion on what would it mean just to collect it once. And that lead actually to a discussion about quality. So what these data has to fulfill, that you can reuse it. It sounds very simple, it's incredibly difficult. And then who has already made some definition or standards? And we just talked about geographic data. They also have standards. In some fields, they're using the same data as we, but we have another definition for them. It's funny because I'm sitting here now in a room from the Federal Office of Topography. So it's not the Federal Statistical Office, because we work close together talking about how we build in the sense of what is quality for both. A system that we collect data only once. And that can be in every country a bit different. But what we have to reach is that on a global level, we agree on how we standardize and harmonize the standards and the definitions. And I think this is the thing what we have really to focus on a bit, and also to build up the capacity building in that direction. But in some countries, they don't even have data. You know what I mean? Here we talk about harmonization of data because we have too many different data and sources. And I'm sure Yusuf will say, hey guys, nice problem. I mean, I don't even have the data. So what is quality of data? It is also that we have all the data that we can collect, that every country can collect. I mean, just doing simple things like this, and other countries have to harmonize because they have too much of them. But exactly this discussion is important. And I mean, who else than the UN should really look that we gain some progress in exactly such questions? And then we would also have better data for the SDGs, because I fully agree with Ambassador Estoeva was saying. I mean, sometimes we compare an apple with orange, you were mentioning, even though both are fruits, but it doesn't help us to really compare which country is where and where we should help and things like that. And I think this is something we can really do more and better and incorporate other institutions. I mean, maybe, I don't know, in use of, maybe new country, is it more the Telefonica data from a private institution because of they have quicker data, better data than the official statistic? I don't know it, but I'm just saying it. Then we have to look in each country with whom we can work together to gain qualitatively high data. And then we aggregate also towards the UN that we really talk about the same thing. I mean, I think we are on a good way, but we have to incorporate others, and we have to communicate better so they understand that this is a common problem that we can solve.
Thank you. At this moment, I mean, we have deviated a bit from the script, but I'm very happy about the discussion. And one of the things that I wanted to mention and throw in here, perhaps, is the agenda of the Statistical Commission has, of course, changed. I mean, I've been sitting in the commission for 30 years now as a dutiful civil servant of the UN Secretariat. And of course, we have our classical themes. The Statistical Commission still needs to organize the world census round so that we all count people at the same moment in the same way. This is a very basic thing we need to do. We need to keep the discussion, we need to keep the definition of GDP up to date to incorporate new phenomena in the economy like digital economy and globalization and so on. We are doing these things. So these are the classical topics. But we've gotten a lot more new other topics like data quality, data policy, access to data, data infrastructure, data stewardship. And these are new topics that have been popping up over the last couple of years to address exactly all of these issues that you have been discussing. My question to the panelists would be: is there anything that the Commission is still missing? Is there a topic that is being discussed at your country level, for instance, or that you see a need from the political level, Ambassador, that we would need to our agenda we need to add to our agenda to be more
Of course, I'm looking through the prism of ECOSOC and the SDGs as such. So my comments will be on that. And we keep talking about stakeholder participation. And I'm not sure how the Statistical Commission involves stakeholder basically, you engage with the stakeholders and how you use them to improve your data collection and your comparability. So maybe if there is a way to strengthen that link with the participation of the stakeholders, that would be extremely useful to all of us. We mentioned earlier the review of the functional commissions, and you yourself mentioned that there was little that you needed to change, or almost anything, because the Statistical Commission does show that you interact well and with the other functional commissions, because as I said, everybody needs data, and also you were the ones that worked on the indicators of the SDGs, so you didn't have to align with the SDG implementation because you've already developed the tools for the SDG implementation, which the rest of the UN system and countries are using. And here I would like to take the opportunity to thank the Bulgarian National Institute, Statistical Institute. I'm not sure if they're on the call at the moment, but in my previous capacity, I actually saw the team that was developing our national voluntary review, and we figured how difficult it was to have actually access to reliable data. And thanks to the Institute, we managed to finalize our review, and we identified again the lack of disaggregated data as something that needs to be improved nationally, but I guess also there. And again, how you can get their involvement more, because when the SDGs are concerned, the stakeholders are the ones really that implement them.
Yes, thank you. Gabriela?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, maybe I reflect to the stakeholder issue. I think all national statistical offices have a very long established practice of interacting with stakeholders. And I think this is the main way that the Commission can incorporate stakeholder concerns, that we have our national stakeholder discussions and negotiations and conversations, and the result of that is always sooner or later filtered somehow into or channeled somehow into the work of the Statistical Commission. Or what I think we may be missing, and I think maybe Ambassador, you reflect on that, we have less interaction within the with the other commissions, that other functional commissions. We have good interaction with many of them, but maybe with not all. And the work in the UN don't recognize what added value statistics can give to their work, what added value indicators can give to their work, that actually anything in the world can be described by indicators. We only need to have the request, and then sooner or later, after some time, of course, sometimes it takes more time, we can develop the indicators that are needed, even in areas where we didn't have previously, let's say governance statistics, or humanitarian statistics on humanitarian issues, which we didn't really have data on in the past. But we are working on it, and governance statistics is becoming an important area of statistics in the Commission also. So I think a constant stakeholder consultation would be useful, and maybe we could find a way of organizing that within the Commission, and not only relying on national inputs that come from stakeholder discussions at the national level. When the question of do we miss something on the agenda came up, I thought we probably don't miss any topic on the agenda, but we may miss some aspects of what we do in the agenda on those topics. For instance, what we saw during the COVID times, but we also felt it previously, that timeliness has become the main issue in our statistical work. All our users, relevance and timeliness, they wanted more data that are relevant to current issues, which didn't emerge previously, and also more timely data. And I think that is something which we need to better discuss in the Statistical Commission, how national statistical systems can respond in a more timely way, how they can produce more timely data and present more timely data to the users. This, in some instances, it's easy. In other instances, it needs a lot of discussion and a lot of negotiation and a lot of let's say even legal solutions, I mean legislative solutions of how national statistical systems have access to certain types of data, especially privately held data, because government data are there. They are more easily accessible, not always, but on the whole, they are more easily accessible to national statistical offices. But privately held data may be very difficult to access, and more guidance on that, more guidance on how legislation can help statistical offices in that could be useful. So what I mean is not strictly speaking statistics, but the environment of statistics could be better discussed in our and better resolutions could come out of the Commission's discussion on those topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. And I had seen Yusuf earlier raising his hands, and I'd be also very interested in his perspective of what can the Statistical Commission do to help developing countries around the world. Not only developing countries, also developed countries have their challenges to expand their indicator and information systems. But of course, our primary concern is what can we do better as a UN family to support developing countries? Are there any topics, any things we need to add?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan. I think there are two groups of stakeholders that we can benefit by engaging or engaging more. One group is the group of regulators. Regulators here, I'm talking about central banks, telecom regulators, transport regulators, and so on and so forth. In Rwanda, we've benefited a lot by the relationship that we have with these regulators. For example, when you've built a good relationship with the regulators, for example, in telecoms, you can have very good access to telecom information, logs, and so on and so forth. First of all, they'll give you insight on what is practical in working with telecom data. And then you'll work around arrangements on how to access the data, and then how to ensure confidentiality and avoid misuse. And then if you want data, for example, here in Rwanda, if I want anything from the telecoms, I don't deal with individual telecoms. I just deal with the regulator, just one letter. And then all telecoms work with the regulator, and the regulator works back with me with all the data. So it's very important that we establish good relations with regulators. The same with financial institutions. We just work with the central bank, and we get information from all financial institutions in Rwanda. The second group, I talked about it earlier a little bit, is the group that I want to call development decision makers. And here, both at the global, but also at the national level. And here specifically, those that deal with financing, and those that deal with the political decisions, for example, members of parliament in countries, those that manage treasuries and finances of countries, politicians, and so on and so forth. We want to make sure that we build a very strong relationship with them so that they give us a lot of support in the work that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. I think at this point, I mean, we've had fun on the panel. Apologies to all of the over 150 participants worldwide. But I want to open the floor just for a few moments in case there are any particular questions that somebody would like to raise at this point. So I'm giving the participants the opportunity to raise their hands or also to put something into the chat. Who wants to respond to that, to the important issue of capacity building. I mean, as this data system is evolving, our capacity to deal with the broader data system and data ecosystem needs to evolve, and that requires continuous investment. And when I say capacity building, I always say there are different types of capacity. There's financial capacity, there's institutional capacity, and there's of course human knowledge capacity. So there's many dimensions of capacity building. And of course, I also call our professional community sometimes a capacity solidarity community, in the sense if somebody in our universe has figured out a good solution, we want to share it with everybody. But perhaps if among the panelists, I mean, there are some views on yes, priorities. I mean, in terms of capacity, there's so much to be done. Where would you start, or where would you see the Statistical Commission starting having a debate that helps you? Perhaps I should go back to Yusuf first, because I mean, obviously you were also one who raised that issue in an earlier segment of the discussion.
Of course, at the Commission level, it's very challenging to see how the Commission can work directly with institutions at country levels beyond national statistics offices. What I think can be done is of course, figuring out, just like I said, some of the institutions that we want to represent like big sectors. Some of the institutions that we want to represent big sectors. For example, I see at regional level, for example, at the East African community level, we've already started engaging, for example, central banks and revenue authority institutions, when we have meetings, when we have regional statistical meetings of the countries in the region, we also invite like the central banks, we also invite like the revenue authorities, because these are very strong sources of data. And if we organize capacity building operations, sometimes we also involve them. So the approach that the Commission can take should be very strategic in seeing those institutions that can help us achieve a lot with few input, with really few input. Just like the regulators I talked about, the telecom regulators and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think that's how the Commission can work. Thank you.
Sharing positive models, that things that have worked in a particular country, is also sharing that with the broader community. Any other remarks on this particular point from the panel? Otherwise, I do have one request for the floor, but I want to give the others the opportunity if they wanted to share a reflection on the capacity building dimension. If not, then let me go to Mustafa, our dear friend from the Palestinian Statistical Office, who has his hand raised. Mustafa, do you have a question? And if you have a question to a particular panelist, please let us know who you would like to direct your question to.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. I'm so happy to see you all, many friends and colleagues over the screen, and also the attendees. I'm joining you from Beirut, from ESCWA, so I have to just to let you know that I'm now there. I will back to what just my friend Gabriela just raised, the issue of the governance statistics as one of the new areas that intervened recently to the official statistics. And here I really would like to bring the attention to the Commission in order to, I think the time is now to have the minimum list of indicators on governance based on the long experience of Braya Group, all of the work that have been done before, and also not to be limited of the few indicators that have been included within the G16. So this is one crucial issue to help our countries on having at least the minimum list of indicators to be part of the official statistics as core indicators. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing this view and a question. Does anybody stressing the importance of governance indicators? Anybody from the panelists would like to react to that? Okay, I thought I heard a voice, but I didn't. I have one question from the chat. Let me just read it. I think that one of the main issues is the lack and the low levels of data and statistical literacy among many of our populations, politicians, and data producers. I mean, that explains also the low level of response rate to censuses and surveys, which also affects then the quality of our information. So I think that question comes back to one of the topics that George earlier raised about the communication and data literacy. I mean, as I always joke, my grandfather always said, do good and talk about it. And it's not only good enough to do good, we also have to explain what we are doing. And maybe we technical statisticians are sometimes not the best persons in doing that. And at the national level, I think many statistical offices now have communication departments because it's part of their operations, and not only producing numbers, but also selling them, bringing them to the right use and to the right people. And in a way, also making a pitch for your relevance, because if we just put our data up there on the shelf, and we don't know what happens to them in terms of use, that's dangerous also, because at one point we also need to make a pitch for our budget and investment in statistics, which we are doing. So better communication, that is not a topic that the Statistical Commission has been discussing, different experiences in countries of communicating data better. Is that something that we should perhaps put on the agenda? George, I see your hand up.
Absolutely. I mean, I just remind you, everybody knows, or remind Hans Rosling. Yeah? He took UN data and explained it so simply in a humorful way that actually he put the thing what we do all together in our countries together and explaining politicians and children and students and everybody in the world how things work and how we can see these things. I mean, something like this is important, I think. My Hans Rosling doesn't exist anymore, but every one of us is a kind of an ambassador who can tell, not only on a national level, but also on an international level, what you can do out of this data. I mean, you all are a bit aware of the Project Rosely that we're starting. It was a bit, remember, for the UN World Data Forum, we had the Road to Bern, where we made 71 events with any different stakeholders, from politicians to techie companies and whatever. And this was a huge success. And I think something like that, we should try to, I mean, it's an easy way to get closer to other people. I mean, maybe some of you have seen that we produced also a video where we took this famous film from Hans Rosling, where he compared the life expectancy and growth of wealth. And we extended that a bit with climate indicator topics, things like that. If we start doing something like that together in every country, but where we show also a bit the value of that, what we do together, not only the thing we do national-wise, I think that's something which is good, because then it's valuing not only our work, also the work from the UN. You know what I mean? I think this is a bit something that we're not doing too often. And I think that's something that we can bit, yeah. If some people have a good idea, and we also take a bit resources from everyone, and we'll also find some money for producing things like that. But we're not just focusing ourselves, but also the UN and the world. To try what we can do better than we do today.
Thank you, George. And as my old boss once said, no good deed goes unpunished. You just offered to help your Swiss excellent experiences in communicating information. So we will perhaps put this topic on the agenda then and share good experiences, how different statistical offices in around the world have communicated better and reached out to particular communities. I have the dreaded sign of 5 minutes left popping up on my screen, but I give the floor to Gabriela, and then we have the final round of 1 minute takeaways, ideas from all of our panelists. But Gabriela, on the use question and
Yes.
a communication question.
Communication question. Yes, certainly we are not as strong in communicating as we are in our technical work and our methodological and all statistical work. We need to communicate more, certainly, about our core values. There was a question in the chat by Robert about the values. There is not enough time to talk about values now, to elaborate on values, but certainly we need more communication about our values as statisticians and as official statisticians, which is not two different things, but certainly not the same. We also need to communicate more about our fundamental principles, not only our values, but our fundamental principles. And I think this is something that we neglected today, but we often talk about in other events, that our fundamental principles are the principles we all know and the principles that we all observe, but they are not necessarily known well enough in the political world, in the government sector. We as statisticians know them very well, but we need to draw more attention by our users and our politicians globally, all over the world, about those fundamental principles. As for developing or improving statistical literacy in our populations. Of course, we need to improve statistical literacy in our populations in order for them to understand why they should reply, let's say, to survey questions. But we can also develop our survey methodologies to help improve the response rates. So literacy is one side. Our survey methodologies can certainly be improved all the time. And also we have to look for alternative data sources, because our experience is that it is more and more difficult, that people are more and more reluctant to respond to surveys. So alternative data sources will be another solution, which doesn't mean that we don't need to improve statistical literacy, but still alternative data sources are probably the future. For that, I would like to draw your attention to the ISI, International Statistical Literacy Program, which is a very important, very big program, and which can be useful for all statisticians or countries that are dealing or that are thinking of introducing such programs at the national level. And also, I think we should. When you ask that, should we maybe put on the agenda of the Commission communication? Yes, we should. The Conference of European Statisticians did do that a few years back, and it was very useful for all participant countries to see how to better communicate, and also those publications that the UNEC gave out about communicating statistics, the story that it's not only data, we need a story. But anyway, the whole series of publications that they put out were very useful for countries. And I think we should elevate that to the global level, and it would be very, very useful for all national statistical systems if we could discuss that more. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us just all of that last principle. The Statistical Commission is the apex body, but we have all the regional committees too, and very good work is done in all the regions. And sometimes the Statistical Commission also has the function to elevate something that has been discussed extensively in one region and bring it to the global level. Okay, we are almost at the end of the event. I had offered all the panelists a 1 minute final thought, takeaway, and I would like to start inviting Ambassador Stoeva. Perhaps, what did you hear?
From today is a reaffirmation that data and statistics you what ECOSOC can do to help you do your work better. So if you cannot answer now, please reach out to me. But I also want to use the rest of my time to highlight the question that I see here in the chat, which says, "Good morning, I'm a biologist. And if I understood Stefan well, and ecosystem data confused me, and I thought the discussion was about environmental data. So why do you call it ecosystem data?"
Okay, yes, I think we borrowed it from the biology and natural environment, because we thought the whole, first of all, I like the word system because it's not only individual pieces of information, but it implies that all of the information elements are also connected to each other. And I think adding the dimension of ecosystem is that data almost grow naturally nowadays all around us. And I mean, we have the wonderful and yet challenging task of managing this complicated ecosystem, and so. Good. Thank you, Madam Ambassador, also for your outreach. I mean, your question, what can ECOSOC do? And I have my bureau here at the table, and certainly we can. I see this whole conversation today as a beginning of a dialogue and not the end of a dialogue. We are, as we said at the beginning, warming up to our Statistical Commission. So, but thank you for explicitly reaching out asking that question, and we will certainly come back to you perhaps with some ideas of how we could make a contribution to the high-level political forum or even the SDG summit to emphasize the role and the potential of data as an enabler for achieving our ambitious development agenda. So thank you for that offer. Perhaps then Gabriela and then Yusuf and George.
As a statistician, I'm always proud to work in a profession that is so useful for everybody, and that all stakeholders who recognize this are really grateful for all the information they get from statistics and all the guidance they get on the use of statistics, which is also important for them to be able to use the statistics that we produce. I think what we saw today, certainly from this panel discussion, is that life is more colorful than just than what we see in documents. Life is life. It's really lively and colorful, and that we need to see all aspects of our work in a different light. Because of the evolution of, let's not call it then data ecosystem if it is confusing, but the new landscape of data, which is a fast evolving landscape, a fast changing landscape, and we have to really adapt to remain relevant and to produce high quality data. And of course, timeliness is one of the dimensions of quality. So in order to produce data that can be used by everybody, and also in order to develop methods of not only producing high quality data, but also of producing model-based data, which we need to, if we don't have sufficient data sources, other data sources, we need to produce model-based data. We need to produce data by integrating all kinds of data sources, and also in improving the presentation of our data. And this relates also to communication, how we can present the data in order to be useful, and also to be useful and professional, but also to attract the audience, to attract the users, and for them to see the real value of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Yusuf?
Yeah, thank you very much. My takeaway is strategic engagement. We need to focus on strategic engagement, especially with those partners that can have a lot of impact on our work, both in terms of input, but also support, specifically regulators and decision makers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yusuf. And last but not least, George.
Many things has been said already. Maybe two things I would add. One is learning together, talking to each other, and also communicate together. And I mean, I would find it super if we can have a communication in one or the other way, also together with ECOSOC. And that leads me a bit to the second part. What I want to say is, I think it's important that we have a very good network. We have very good competences. We try to give our information to UN officials and to every country in that world, that they can make decisions for this world, which is very unique on that world. So we should help valuing the data that we have, also for the value of the UN. It sounds a bit logic, maybe, but in times where people are having difficulties to orient themselves, times fake news and wars and whatever, I think the value of the UN, that we have common values, common data, that we agree on references and things like that, we should also communicate and show what we can do together. And I think this is a value we also should focus. This is maybe something, where is it in statistics, in data, or in learning? It doesn't matter. I think doing these things together, this is a value that we can really play better than, or more than we have already done for the last couple of years.
Thank you very much. And I certainly, this was a very rich discussion, and I certainly will not even attempt to summarize it. You have drawn some key conclusions, and we will certainly follow up. We have, I said, this is the beginning of a dialogue, not the end. We have the avenues for that. We will have further bureau meetings. We are in the full process of the preparation of the commission. And I warned you, the strategic intention of this event was to whet your appetite. So if you had fun today, as much as I had, and I really enjoyed the discussions, come again. We have more side events coming up on the way to the Statistical Commission in this virtual space. But we will also, of course, have our physical meetings to really start scrolling on our Statistical Commission website, because there is not only the official formal program and the over 30 documents that are now available or will be available very soon in the 6 languages, which are our fundamental parliamentarian business, but there will be also a lot of side events that will give us the opportunity to expand on these thoughts and continue the dialogue among its other and with others important partners and stakeholders, as we all already said today. So then I just wanted to say really thank you. I mean, to the panelists. I mean, you made it really easy for me to moderate it. I just had to play the ping pong balls from one to the other. You engaged passionately and intellectually. So I would really like to thank our four panelists for being there. I'd like to thank my team for being in the background and making it all possible, and keeping me on track. And I would like to thank the over 150 participants who connected from different parts in the universe to us to be part of this exchange and dialogue. And because it has been recorded, if you enjoyed it and somebody you know missed it, we will put this on our website so other people can still listen to that. And as I said, please do come again. We have more side events coming up. We have two high-level side events, one on the Cape Town Action Plan and its review, and one of the review of our field of social statistics, how to bring that forward. So these are coming up before New York, but then otherwise, I'm just thanking everybody around the world and looking very much forward to seeing you very, very soon in conference room 4. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists and everybody who was part of this exchange.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Have a
Thank you.
good day around the world.